everyone. Today we got to play Flourish. So this is a tableau set collection garden game, if you will. But before we get into it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell because board games are awesome and you want to learn more about them. So, Randy, tell us more about Flourish.
So Flourish was a 2021 release. We obviously picked it up at Gen Con. It has a rating right now of 7.1 on Board Game Geek, and a Board Game Geek rank is currently 3,318.
That's not bad getting right out of the gate. Yeah.
It was a Kickstarter originally. It plays 1 to 7, which is a really nice range.
That is a really nice range.
And it's 20 to 60 minutes in length, and that's about right. Age is 8 and up, which probably is about right too.
That's about right, yeah.
Design is by James A. Wilson and Clarissa A. Wilson, so I'm assuming...
Hey, they're related to you!
No, they're not. Just because they have the same last name, they'd be related to you too. So,
well, no, because I married in.
Well,
so,
yeah.
Like,
I'm sure one of them married in too. So, I mean, they could be brother sister. We don't know, but I would assume husband wife. The art was by April Borchelt, Dan May, Christina Key, and Naomi Robinson. Was published by Starling Games. The MSRP, I couldn't find this for retail. Now, when this is the signature edition, and I think all that means is it's got the gold inlaid on the embossed on the board, or on the box, I should say. And then there's a bunch of expansion cardboard stuff, which we'll get to here in momentarily. But it was very odd because I can't tell what's actually in the retail copy because I couldn't find a retail copy. So
I mean, could they not be doing the one in retail?
They may only be selling it online. Well, but it did have a pre-order for it on a website, but it was in a different language. So I guess I could have done a little more due diligence and tried translating, but I didn't.
Google Translate for the win.
So yeah, I couldn't find any details on what is in the retail copy versus what's in the Kickstarter. So we're going to be talking about the Kickstarter version because that's what we have.
As we talk about this, I'm still dying to know if they have any relation to you, just because.
I really doubt it.
But I'm dying to know.
There are a lot of people with the last name Wilson.
I know.
All right.
I know. All right, so let's talk about quality of pieces. So the standard. Well, we don't know if the standard or not, but these are linen finish. Yeah. I think they're actually pretty durable.
Yeah, these are really solid cards. It was hard to shuffle the whole deck because they were thick cards and they didn't fit easy. Yeah, these are good quality cards.
I feel like you will be handling these much.
You'll probably want to put a sleeve on them even still because of how much you're going to shuffle.
So no matter what, I mean, they're good quality of cards. They did well doing this, but there is a lot of handling involved in this game. Maybe not so much shuffling because you only shuffle at the beginning.
Well, you shuffle each time you play, so it's one time, but it's a lot of cards being shuffled.
Right. And so the other bits are these cardboard creations, yes. Which, Randy, you had a lot of fun doing.
No, I didn't. So that's that was my big grievance with it. There was a ton of assembly, but it does look really pretty.
They do look pretty amazing. So I would say worth it.
I will say it.
And they seem pretty sturdy.
They punched well, and they generally went together well. The only ones that didn't were like these circles that you had to push all the way down. You had to line them up perfectly, and even then, it still wanted to.
But I mean, these they're pretty, they did a good job on
they're designed well.
And then you also have the ribbons, which are, cardboard, but they're good, solid bits.
There are 7 copies of each one of those, and the walls, and you had to assemble 7 of these. So there was a ton of assembly.
Now, these are nice to keep your score over the course of several months. Quality of pieces, I think they actually turned up on this.
I do too. I think this is, for the components that are in it, I'm probably giving it a 9.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Most of the time when we do cardboard assembly, they're half falling apart or they're damaged. Yeah. And that wasn't the case here, which is phenomenal.
I think I had one of all of them peel slightly at the top when I was assembling it. out of all of them.
Way better than some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Do you remember, what's that game that was heavy assembly?
It was Merchant's Cove.
Merchant's Cove. We literally played that
once. It was horrible.
Yes. So, nothing. This is by far way better quality.
As far as assembly. I should say horrible assembly on Merchant's Cove because the boats were horribly designed.
Yeah.
This one, it went together very nicely compared to anything else, but it had a ton of assembly.
Yeah, so heavy on the assembly, I think worth it in the end.
Except for the all of these components that you're showing are a variant. They're not even in the main game.
Which is kind of sad.
Yeah, so the only things you actually use in the main game are the walls, and that's really just a cosmetic divider.
I think all of these are cosmetic.
No, these actually have functionality. And then, of course, you do use the score cards.
Yes.
Which I do
like. I use that quite a bit. All right, so I agree with the 9. Let's talk about theme. The art, beautiful.
Yeah, it looks almost, I mean, the box and the cards look very similar to, reminds me of Thomas Kincaid art. You know, the painter of light or whatever they call them. But they're very, they do use really good light in all these pictures. The art is, I think, fantastic for what this is. Did I realize we were building a garden until a little bit later? No. I was like, why is it all these flowers? And I didn't realize the mushrooms were mushrooms, which is kind of a shame because I love mushrooms. And, some of the stone paths, why did you have a forest? Anyway, I didn't realize it until midway. I was like, oh, we're doing garden. Which, with the name Flourish and the artwork of a garden should have made sense to me. But looking at it back now, I feel like it should have been obvious. Well, I think the green might be an indicator. If you looked at the cards and saw how green they were. Well,
I was focused on the iconography, hence the score compared to your score versus mine. No, but this is beautiful. I mean, what would you give it a score?
I love the art, and
it is gorgeous.
I mean, the theme is kind of meh to me, but as far as it's gardening is not my favorite thing, but because it is so beautiful, I'm probably going to give this probably a 8 as far as theme.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking an 8. The art is beautiful, spot on. I mean, the theme is, I feel like, a little bit layered on.
Yeah, it's definitely layered on. It could be widgets. It could be anything.
Yeah, the mechanics aren't, indicative to gardening.
But I'm glad it was gardening because it's so pretty.
Right, exactly. It is beautiful, and it is consistent throughout. And just, the artwork alone would have given it an 8. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. For me. So let's then talk about Rulebook.
All right.
So one of the things... Caveat, there's 1,000,001 ways to play, right?
There's a lot, not 1,000,001, but there's a lot of ways to play. So first of all, beautiful art again on the cover.
Yeah.
I like the cover. Negative point for me.
Oh.
Centerfold. I hate centerfolds.
It was going so well.
It was going so well, and then they put a centerfold in. They didn't at least sequence it the way logically you would read it, as opposed to some of the centerfolds I've seen. So... It goes through. They do a really nice detail on the assembly of this. Now I'm assuming that the Kickstarter the retail version doesn't include all of these because of the fact that the main book does not include any of them.
Okay.
So when you look at the main book, if you see setup, all it has are these to assemble.
Well.
So I'm assuming that the Kickstarter had these as an expansion because they're included in the auxiliary rule sheet, which is the Friends and Folly expansion sheet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I'm guessing that if there were a retail, it would not have it, but I don't know.
Or it might be an expansion that you buy.
But yes, the rule book is 6 pages long. It's not that hard of a read, and then you've got the auxiliary sheet, which is just front and back. But in that 6 pages, you get a lot of variety on how to play this game. And that was what was so interesting about it, because the first 4 pages, or 3.5 pages, are how to play the game. After that, it's all different ways, variants.
Well, it was so funny because we were playing the game and I was like, man, it's a bummer you don't have an option to be able to discard a card. And he's like, oh, that's a variant.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, I wish we could do this. And it was like, oh, it's a variant. And it was like, oh, well, okay.
So we chose to go ahead and play with one of the variants because I was afraid the game would be too short otherwise. And I think it was a wise choice. Because the base game, you play 4 rounds of a game. There's 3 rounds that are standard, and then there's basically a wrap-up round.
Yeah.
And with the Garden Show variant, you actually play the game 3 times and use these ribbons, which are included in the rulebook, so that I would assume are part of the base retail. But you can play it with or without that. So you can play where you play 3 games and potentially score these ribbons.
Yeah.
You also have the 2-player variant. You have solo rules. You have a compost variant, which is what you mentioned, where you can actually discard one of the cards that you have left over. But then you can play this competitively or cooperatively with the same rules. The only difference is you're trying to help each other score points to try to maximize your point count. And you get thresholds, you get medals for reaching certain scores as a co-op. But if you put in some of the variants, like the discarding of cards, you have to add points to your medals.
I feel like we're slightly touching into gameplay.
Well, I'm not going into gameplay. I'm just telling you what's in the rulebook. Now, the rulebook itself is actually very well laid out. It's sectioned nicely. There is not color coding in it per se, but they do have color segments back here on the back for how to score. There's cheat sheets on the cards that give you at least examples of how to score. They don't tell you everything, but they do show you the basics on scoring.
Yeah. So what do you give it a score-wise?
I'm probably going to go ahead and give the rulebook here a 9 because they did such a nice job.
What?
Yeah.
A centerfold, a 9?
Even with the centerfold, I'm not going to dock it that much because it was a really good rulebook.
Man?
It was easy to read. It got the details out in a very concise form. And
so my question is what happened to my husband, and where did you put him?
I could be nice on rulebooks. I've had a few that I've been impressed with.
Okay.
So even though this was a centerfold, I think
if it wasn't a centerfold, would you have given it a 10?
No, 9.5 probably. I'd dock it halfway.
Okay, it's not bad. All right, so let's dive into gameplay. So we, like Randy brushed on, there are many multiple variants. So we're going to touch base with just the general gameplay, knowing that some of the variants add different things. So it's very straightforward. You start off with 6 cards in your hand. Wow, 6.
We get rid of this tableau here.
I mean, I guess if you really want to. Why are you ruining my wonderful board?
So if you're familiar with Between Two Cities, this has similar gameplay to that in some ways.
Yeah. So here, Randy, here's our wall.
Okay.
You got our wall. All right.
Build a bigger one over here between us.
We may need it. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. So it's pretty straightforward. So basically, you are going to pick a card to play in your tableau. You start with 6 cards. You're going to pick one to play in your tableau. I'm just going to do this one to kind of go over it.
You put it face down in front of you.
Right. And then you're going to choose one to give to your opponents. One on each side of you, I should say.
Yeah.
I kind of want that one. I want to play.
I didn't even look. I just put one over there.
Yeah.
And they're going to give you one back.
Yes, and they're going to give you one back. So here, he's going to give you this one.
You're all going to reveal at the same time what you played into the center.
Correct.
And then you're going to take the 2 cards that were given to you and one from the center back into your hand, so you start with another fresh round of 6 cards.
And you do that until you have 3 cards laid out. So we'll just we'll do this.
Yeah, these didn't go. That was a bad choice of cards to play at the beginning.
I know, right? Tell me about it. Okay. I'm going mushrooms because they cool. Although I wouldn't have played this in this order.
Yeah, these cards don't go together at all.
All right. Well, we're just gonna wing it. All right. So when you have your first row, was this column or a row?
It's a row.
It's a row. And when you get done with your first row, then you do any of the scoring mechanisms that are at the top of the card, okay? Now, the scoring mechanisms on the bottom of the card are end of
game
or end of
If you're playing
round.
the variant, then it's well, it's not, I wouldn't call it a round. It's still end of game. You just play 3 games.
Okay, yeah, end of game. All right, so you have end of game at the bottom, end of round at the top. So in like my case, this one has, I get 1 point for every mushroom in my tableau. I get that twice. I have 3, so that would give me a total of 6. I would add 6 here. He would score his.
I would get 1 point because I did not play him very well.
Wow. And so then you keep building out until you get to the 4th row. Now your 4th row is a little bit different because you'll take the cards from each side of you. You will not add to... you won't pick up from the center. And on the 5 cards you have to lay down 3 for that final row. Now, certain variants change that, but that's generally...
And that typically will be the end of the game. If you play, you'll play a total of 12 cards and the game's over. So it's a really fast game if you're playing the standard game. We played the variant where we played it 3 games, and it was still pretty quick.
Yeah, so card iconography. So you have, like I said, the top here is end of round scoring. The bottom here is end of game scoring. You have this icon here, which are different stone tiles. That's 1 scoring opportunity, as well as you'll get
flowers on the
side. Or mushroom growth on here, which is another iconography that you can score. So I think that pretty much covers everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of iconography in the game. The cheat sheet card does a pretty good job of covering most of the scenarios. I had to answer questions a few times, but I think it was just because people weren't looking at the scorecards.
You are correct, because I didn't even realize there was a cheat sheet over here. Because the game was pretty straightforward that I didn't really have to...
Yeah.
So it was my fault for asking twice.
That's more to refer to your dad, but okay.
Yeah, he asked significantly more than I did.
Yeah.
That's okay, because I love Daddy. So score it. What do you give it? What do you give it?
I like the depth on this. I there is a lot of randomness in the sense that the cards you're getting dealt from the center and from you're getting given to you from the other people are going to influence what you can play.
I like the fact that you can change it up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you wanted to, like, I'm excited to play this card version because there were multiple times I was like, I don't want to give this to anybody, and I sure the heck don't want it. Like, I wish I could have compost. Like, I wish I could have gotten rid of it.
So yeah, I mean, I love the fact that they made it so versatile. I mean, the fact that you can play it cooperatively and competitively without changing the rules significantly. It's really the same game. It's just now you're trying to help each other by keep each other cards. That's really, I mean, they put a lot of thought in this game as far as the design.
Well, I mean, the fact it is so versatile, depending on the group, you can kind of alter it how you play it. Because you have some groups of people that are more wanting to play solo and not mess with each other, or maybe more co-op, or so I think this has pieces that everyone could possibly end up enjoying.
For every variant, they went through and said, this is how much points you have to alter the medals for the co-op mode, which I thought was like, okay, obviously they've play tested this a lot to figure out what are those thresholds and how much should they alter that. So, I mean, they put a lot of work into this game. So, I like the mechanics of this game. I like the way it flows. It is very basic and very simple. It's going to be easy to teach.
I think you hit it spot on. It has a really good flow. Because some games you go in and it feels kind of clunky. This was a very smooth ride.
Yeah.
Like, it was a smooth playing game.
Yeah.
I agree with that, absolutely.
And I mean, all you're doing is literally playing a card every round. And then, drawing and giving other people cards. Well, but there's a lot of strategy in it.
Well, because when you first told me, I was like, oh, this is going to be boring. But it didn't turn out that way at all. Like, you had to manage. Well, because for me, it's like, because you're playing one card, but you have 12 cards you're going to end up playing. So, like, which ones do I hold? Which ones do I keep? When do I play this? Like, at the beginning, you want to put your end of game out because your end of round aren't going to trigger as many. So it was like you had to think, okay, well, but I want this end of round. That's what I didn't
pick up until game 3 of this.
Oh, is that why I absolutely kicked your tab?
Because I was like, I especially the ones that score off what your opponents have. Because like the final round, I scored a lot of points, but it was basically I was feeding your dad what I wanted him to play, so that when I played my cards, I would get a lot of points. So he was building up all the vines, and I was scored like 17 points off of his vines. So I mean, it was a lot more strategic playing in the final round because it took me 2 games to play through.
You didn't realize
before I could think, okay, well, if I save these till the final play, but then I had to hold on to it.
But did you not realize, like that first game, I had no end of round scoring, none. Second round, I had 2 cards at the last round. That was, I mean, and listen, guys, was it 90 points that I beat you compared? I mean, pretty significant point variation.
60 or
I'm at 364.
80 points.
Okay, 80 points. So you kind of kicked my butt there for the last one. Not kicked my butt. I still got more points than you, but you still came back pretty heavily.
No, don't give me credit. Come on, no.
So you figured it out.
I figured out that I should have delayed playing my point scoring ones that were based upon other players. I still think you can generate points along the way and maybe do better than even you did, because you kind of gave up one on versus the other. I think you could probably capitalize and get more points than you did.
No, because if you think about it though, because the end of round scoring is everything you have in your tableau. So, like if you do end of game first, you have the whole tableau to build that.
Yeah.
Versus if you played an end of round, you only have like the 3 cards or the 6 cards you've played to be able to capitalize on that. It made much more sense to hold that until round 3 and 4 because you had a lot more cards already in play. So you're better off holding those end of round cards and playing the end of game first to get them out of the way, because you don't want to play them at the end, because you lose opportunity there for your end of round.
Yeah.
So
when we talk about your tableau, you're going to end up adding three rows to
4 rows.
Well, 3 to the one you started with.
Right. So total of 4.
And you're only going to score that 1 row for the icons at the top of it, but you count all of the triggered icons. So if you were scoring vines, for example, you would count all the vines in your entire tableau. Or if you're referring to someone else's, you would count all of theirs.
Right. Again, that gives you want those at the end.
Yeah, I agree with totally. The ones those you want at the end.
All of them. End of round needs to be at the end of the game. So with that being said, what did you score?
I haven't yet.
Oh.
I was surprisingly pleased with this. I'm going to probably give this probably an 8 is where I'm at.
I agree with that. I think it's 8 good. It's good.
Yeah.
I'd like to see what the other variants add.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is the variant we played, you have to play 3 games. So most of the other variants are based upon playing at the end of game. So I didn't know how this one would mesh with the others. That's the one, I guess, grievance I had, is this variant is based upon a different play style than all of the other variants. So it's not something you can easily combine everything to, because one of them is end of game scoring, and it's really adorable. They have like little critters that you can attract into your garden, and they have particular things, like the bee likes beehives, of course. So for every beehive, you get 4 points if you collect that. But if you're playing what we did, it would only count.
Well, no, because you already have these kind of in play.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think those are necessary when you already have these.
Yeah, so I don't think you can really mix what we played with the others.
You could. I just think it's going to artificially inflate your victory points.
For some reason, cats like castles. I guess they want to be the king of the castle. I think that's appropriate.
Well, I mean, fair enough.
But I love the art on it with really cute animals. And then the interesting one are the building tile things that we had to construct. All of these, when you play at the end of the game, you get to place these onto a card of your choice that matches it, and it will score for all the things that are adjacent horizontally or vertically. And on your final round, instead of playing 4 rows of 3, the last 3 cards you can position strategically wherever you want on the edges of your 3x3 grid, so that you can maximize your scoring for these building tiles.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, I thought that was interesting. So, and there's, like obviously the discard variant. So there's all these variants, co-op, competitive, I like the way they've done this so that you can play it all these different variety of ways. So I think it's definitely an 8 as far as the gameplay.
I absolutely agree. I think an 8's good for this game. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We had an absolute blast, and hopefully we'll catch you guys again later. Bye.
He said bye. Yeah.